The stars above Earth twinkled peacefully, as they had for billions of years, but that peace was about to shatter. On a quiet morning, the skies changed forever. Massive ships, dark and jagged like mountains torn from some alien world, appeared in orbit around the planet. They blocked out the sun in places, casting eerie shadows over cities and oceans. People stopped what they were doing, staring up in awe and fear. No one knew who or what had come to visit. John Carter sat in his office at the United Nations Space Command headquarters when the news broke. A veteran military strategist with graying hair and tired eyes, John had spent decades preparing for this moment. He didn't expect it to feel so sudden. His phone buzzed nonstop with calls from panicked officials, but he ignored them for now. Instead, he stared at the live footage on his screen. The enormous alien ships hanging silently above Earth, their surfaces covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift and glow faintly. "Are you seeing this?" asked Laura Bennett, her voice cutting through the chaos over the secure line. Laura was a linguist and xenobiologist, one of the few people John trusted completely. She worked at a research facility in Geneva, studying anything that might help humanity understand extraterrestrial life. Right now, she sounded both excited and terrified. "I'm seeing it," John replied, rubbing his temples. "Do we know anything yet? Any communication?" "Nothing clear," Laura said, "but I've been analyzing faint signals coming from their fleet, bits of their language. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" John asked, leaning closer to the screen. Laura hesitated before speaking. "Some of the phrases I've decoded are worrying. Words like harvest and end cycle. It doesn't sound like they're here for friendly talks." John frowned. The word harvest sent a chill down his spine. If these aliens saw Earth as nothing more than a resource to be taken, humanity would have no choice but to fight back. And fighting meant using everything they had been secretly building for years. At the same time, Laura wasn't the only one working hard. Across the globe, scientists, engineers, and soldiers sprang into action. Hidden bases on Mars and the Moon came alive with activity as humanity prepared its defenses. Ships bearing names like *Eagle's Wrath* and *Liberty Dawn* were ready for battle. Pilots trained day and night, knowing the odds might be against them. Among them was Rachel Monroe, a skilled pilot with sharp instincts and a determination to protect her family back on Earth. She flew simulation after simulation, pushing herself harder than ever before. Meanwhile, leaders argued about what to do next. Should they try talking to the aliens, or strike first while they still could? John attended endless meetings, listening to debates that often went in circles. He knew time was running out. The longer they waited, the more likely the aliens would make the first move. Then, something happened that silenced everyone. One of the alien ships moved closer to Earth's atmosphere, sending drones swirling around like insects. These drones scanned the planet, gathering data. Were they looking for weaknesses, planning an attack? No one knew for sure, but it felt like a declaration of intent. John stood in front of a large map of Earth's orbital defenses, pointing out weak points to his team. "We need to assume they're hostile until proven otherwise," he said firmly. "Prepare every ship we have. We can't afford to wait any longer." Laura, still poring over the alien signals, made a breakthrough late that night. She discovered a pattern in the way the aliens communicated, a rhythm that hinted at their thought processes. Using this insight, she began tweaking human technology, trying to create something that could counteract whatever weapons the aliens might possess. As dawn broke over the horizon, John stepped outside, looking up at the alien ships looming overhead. For the first time in his life, he felt truly small. Yet, deep inside, he also felt a spark of defiance. Humanity had faced extinction-level threats before. Asteroids, plagues, nuclear war, and survived. This time would be no different. Little did he know, the real test was just beginning. John Carter walked briskly through the corridors of the United Nations Space Command headquarters. The air buzzed with urgency as officers shouted orders and technicians typed furiously at their stations. Humanity's fate depended on what happened next, and John knew there was no room for mistakes. He had spent years preparing for a scenario like this, but now that it was here, the weight of responsibility pressed down on him harder than ever. The alien ships, belonging to a species called the Krylos, according to Laura Bennett's research, still hung ominously in orbit. Their silence was unnerving. No messages, no demands, just an eerie presence that made Earth feel like prey being watched by a predator. John couldn't shake the feeling that they were sizing humanity up, deciding how best to strike. Laura, meanwhile, worked tirelessly in her lab. Her desk was cluttered with notes, computer screens displaying rows of alien symbols and waveforms. She had managed to decode more of their language, piecing together fragments of what seemed like instructions or warnings. One phrase kept repeating, "Cycle complete." It sent chills down her spine every time she read it. What did it mean? Was it a countdown to something catastrophic? "We need to understand them better," Laura muttered to herself, leaning back in her chair. She glanced at the clock. Days had passed since the Krylos arrived, and tensions were rising. Governments around the world were demanding answers, while civilians panicked, stocking up on supplies and praying for salvation. But salvation wouldn't come easily, not against an enemy this advanced. Back at command, John focused on mobilizing Earth's defenses. For decades, humanity had been quietly building a space armada, hiding its existence from potential threats. Now, those ships were finally seeing the light of day. Vessels like the *Eagle's Wrath* and *Liberty Dawn* emerged from secret bases on Mars and the Moon, their engines roaring as they took position near Earth. Thousands of pilots scrambled to man the fleet, including Rachel Monroe, a determined young woman with quick reflexes and a sharp mind. Rachel trained relentlessly, running simulations until her hands cramped on the controls. She knew the stakes. If the Krylos attacked, she'd be one of the first to face them. Every maneuver, every shot counted. In quiet moments between drills, she thought about her younger brother back home, imagining his face if he saw her ship streaking across the sky. "I won't let you down," she whispered to herself. While the military prepared, Laura raced to adapt human technology using clues from the Krylos transmissions. She noticed patterns in their energy signatures, weak points that might be exploited. Working with engineers, she helped design a prototype weapon called the Quantum Disruptor. It wasn't perfect yet, but early tests showed promise. If it worked, it could disable the Krylos shields, giving humanity a fighting chance. Despite her progress, guilt gnawed at Laura. Decoding the Krylos language felt wrong somehow, like she was helping invaders who viewed humans as insignificant. At night, she lay awake wondering if understanding them would make any difference. Would they even listen if humanity tried to talk? As days turned into weeks, the Krylos remained eerily still. Their drones continued scanning Earth, gathering data without explanation. Then, one morning, disaster struck. A group of Krylos fighters swooped toward a lunar colony, obliterating it in seconds. The attack was swift and merciless, leaving no survivors. Panic erupted across Earth as news of the massacre spread. John slammed his fist on the table during an emergency meeting. "They've made their intentions clear," he growled. "We have to hit back, and hit hard." Rachel volunteered immediately when the call came for pilots to join the counterattack. Flying alongside her was Daniel Hayes, a seasoned pilot known for his calm under pressure. Together, they led squadrons of fighters into battle, dodging enemy fire while launching missiles at the Krylos ships. Explosions lit up the void as humanity fought back with everything it had. Though outnumbered, the human forces discovered something crucial during the skirmish. The Krylos armor plating had weak points. Pilots relayed this information back to Laura, who used it to refine the quantum disruptor further. Each victory, no matter how small, gave Earth hope. But the cost was high. Ships burned, lives were lost, and the war was far from over. John stared at the battlefield footage, his jaw tight. This was only the beginning. The battle raged on in the cold emptiness of space. Earth's ships darted and weaved, their engines leaving trails of light against the dark backdrop of the universe. Rachel Monroe gripped the controls of her fighter, her knuckles white as she dodged bursts of energy fire from the Krylos ships. Around her, other pilots fought with equal determination, their small vessels swarming like bees around the massive alien warships. Daniel Hayes flew close by, his voice crackling over the comms. "Stay sharp, Rachel. They're targeting the supply convoy." Rachel glanced at her radar and saw what he meant. A line of cargo ships carrying vital fuel and ammunition was under heavy attack. If the Krylos destroyed them, Earth's fleet would be stranded without resources. She gritted her teeth and pushed her ship into a steep dive, aiming straight for the enemy fighters harassing the convoy. "Cover me," she shouted, firing a volley of missiles. The explosions lit up the void, forcing the Krylos ships to scatter. For a moment, the convoy was safe. But not for long. More enemy reinforcements arrived, their sleek, insect-like designs gliding effortlessly through the chaos. Daniel's squadron moved in to help, but they were outnumbered. One by one, his teammates fell, their ships exploding in brilliant flashes of light. "We can't hold them off forever," Daniel yelled, desperation creeping into his voice. "I know," Rachel replied, her heart pounding. She knew what she had to do. "Get the convoy out of here. I'll keep them busy." "No way. I'm not leaving you behind," Daniel snapped. "You don't have a choice," Rachel shot back. Before he could argue further, she broke formation and charged directly at the Krylos ships. Her fighter unleashed a barrage of gunfire, drawing their attention away from the retreating convoy. Behind her, Daniel hesitated, then reluctantly obeyed orders, leading the remaining ships to safety. Rachel's bravery came at a cost. Alone and surrounded, she fought fiercely, but the Krylos closed in. Just when it seemed all was lost, another squadron appeared, led by John Carter himself. His larger command ship unleashed a devastating broadside, scattering the enemy forces and giving Rachel a chance to escape. Back at the main fleet, Laura Bennett watched the battle unfold on her screen, her hands trembling. Each explosion felt personal, each loss a reminder of how fragile their resistance was. But amidst the destruction, there was hope. Pilots reported that the Krylos armor plating had weak spots, areas where concentrated fire could penetrate their defenses. This discovery gave Laura an idea. She rushed to the engineering bay, where technicians were fine-tuning the quantum disruptor. "We need to make this work faster," she urged, pointing at the prototype weapon. "If we can mount it on our fighters, we might stand a real chance." The engineers nodded, working tirelessly to miniaturize the device. Hours turned into days as they tested and retested the design. Finally, they succeeded. The disruptor could now be installed on smaller ships, turning ordinary fighters into powerful tools capable of disabling Krylos shields. Laura ran the news to John, who immediately ordered the upgrades to begin. "This changes everything," he said, a rare smile breaking through his usual stern expression. "Tell Rachel and the others. They're getting new toys." When Rachel heard about the disruptor, she felt a surge of renewed determination. Flying back to base, she landed her battered ship and jumped out before it even powered down. Technicians swarmed around her fighter, installing the new weapon. As they worked, Rachel paced nearby, eager to get back into the fight. Finally, the modifications were complete. Rachel climbed back into the cockpit, her fingers brushing against the controls of the disruptor. It hummed softly, ready to unleash its power. Over the comms, Jean's voice came through loud and clear. "This is it, people. We found their weakness. Now let's show them ours." As Rachel and the rest of the fleet prepared for their next mission, Daniel approached her. His face was grim, but his eyes burned with resolve. "You saved us back there," he said quietly. "I owe you." Rachel shook her head. "We're alive because we fight together. Don't forget that." With the quantum disruptor online and morale higher than ever, Earth's forces launched their counterattack. This time, they wouldn't just defend, they would strike back. And somewhere deep inside, Rachel allowed herself to believe that victory might actually be possible. John Carter stared at the holographic map of the solar system, his mind racing. The Krylos had shown they were ruthless, destroying anything that stood in their way. But Earth's forces had managed to survive so far, thanks to the quantum disruptor and the bravery of pilots like Rachel Monroe. Still, John knew they couldn't keep fighting defensively forever. They needed a plan that would end this war once and for all. He tapped the image of Jupiter on the map. "This is where we'll make our stand," he said to his team. His voice was calm but carried an edge of determination. "We lure their flagship, the Void Harvester into a trap near Jupiter. If we can take it out, the rest of their fleet will fall apart." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the risks. To pull off such a daring plan, they'd need to sacrifice smaller ships as bait. It was a brutal strategy, but John believed it was their only chance. He turned to Laura Bennett, who had been working tirelessly to improve the disruptor. "Laura, I need you on this mission. Your expertise with the weapon could make or break us." Laura hesitated. She wasn't a soldier, she was a scientist. But she also knew how much was at stake. "I'll go," she said finally, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. "But I'm not doing this just for Earth. I'm doing it because someone has to stop them before more lives are lost." Rachel volunteered immediately when she heard about the plan. Flying a modified fighter equipped with the latest version of the quantum disruptor, she would lead the assault team tasked with disabling the Void Harvester *. Daniel Hayes insisted on joining her, refusing to let her face the danger alone. Together, they prepared for what might be their final mission. As the operation began, Earth's fleet executed the risky gambit. Smaller ships moved into position near Jupiter, drawing the attention of the Krylos forces. The aliens took the bait, sending squadrons of fighters and support vessels toward the decoys. Behind them loomed the massive Void Harvester *, its shadowy form blotting out the distant sun. Rachel's heart raced as she piloted her ship closer to the enemy flagship. The disruptor hummed softly beneath her fingers, ready to unleash its power. But the Krylos weren't fools. They quickly realized something was wrong. Their ships regrouped, forming a defensive perimeter around the Void Harvester *. Trapped between waves of enemy fire, Rachel and her team fought desperately to hold their ground. "Laura now," Rachel shouted over the comms. Seated in the gunner's chair of another fighter, Laura activated the disruptor prematurely. A pulse of energy surged outward, disabling several Krylos ships and creating a temporary opening. But the move left her vulnerable. Enemy fire tore through her ship's shields, forcing her to retreat. Daniel saw what was happening and made a split-second decision. "Hold on, Laura," he yelled, steering his cruiser directly into the path of incoming missiles. His ship exploded in a blinding flash, shielding Laura from further damage. Over the comms, his last words echoed, "Finish this, for all of us." With tears streaming down her face, Rachel pushed forward, using the chaos to position herself directly beneath the Void Harvester *. Her hands trembled as she locked onto the target. "This is for Daniel," she whispered, pressing the trigger. The quantum disruptor fired, releasing a concentrated burst of energy that shattered the flagship's defenses. Alarms blared across the Krylos fleet as their command vessel faltered, its systems collapsing under the strain. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had struck a decisive blow. Back at headquarters, John watched the live feed, his jaw clenched. The victory came at a heavy price, but it gave Earth a fighting chance. As the surviving Krylos ships scrambled to regroup, he allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. Sacrifices had been made, heroes had fallen. But the fight was far from over. The destruction of the Void Harvester * sent shockwaves through the Krylos fleet. Without their flagship to coordinate attacks, the alien ships began to retreat in disarray. Earth's forces seized the opportunity, launching a coordinated counteroffensive that pushed the invaders farther away from the planet. Explosions lit up the void as human ships chased down the remaining Krylos vessels, their weapons cutting through weakened defenses. Rachel Monroe watched the chaos unfold from her cockpit, her hand still gripping the controls tightly. The adrenaline rush of battle was fading, leaving behind an emptiness he couldn't shake. Daniel's sacrifice weighed heavily on her mind. His final words echoed in her thoughts. "Finish this, for all of us." She had done what he asked, but it didn't feel like enough. Nothing could bring him back. Back on Earth, Laura Bennett stood in front of a monitor, watching the aftermath of the battle. The room buzzed with cheers and applause as technicians celebrated the victory. But Laura felt no joy. Her eyes were fixed on the footage of the Void Harvester breaking apart, its massive frame crumbling into pieces. She had helped make that moment possible, yet all she could think about was the cost, the lives lost, the sacrifices made. John Carter walked into the control center, his expression grim despite the success. He placed a hand on Laura's shoulder. "You did good," he said quietly. "We wouldn't have won without you." Laura nodded but didn't respond. Instead, she turned back to her notes, flipping through pages filled with fragments of the Krylos language. Something about their words kept bothering her. Phrases like harvest and end cycle haunted her, hinting at motivations far deeper than simple conquest. What if the Krylos weren't just invaders? What if they were driven by something beyond their control? Her musings were interrupted by an alert flashing across one of the screens. Scans detected another fleet approaching Earth, larger and more advanced than the first. Fear rippled through the room as everyone realized the war wasn't over. If anything, it was about to escalate. John called an emergency meeting, gathering his top advisors and strategists. "We can't fight another prolonged battle," he said, pacing back and forth. "Not with what's coming our way. We need a different approach." Laura raised her hand hesitantly. "What if we go after them?" she suggested. "Instead of waiting for them to attack Earth, we hit their homeworld. Destroy whatever lets them build these fleets." The idea was risky, but John saw the logic in it. With the quantum disruptor now fully operational and mounted on several ships, humanity had a weapon capable of evening the odds. He nodded slowly. "It's our best shot. Prepare a team for infiltration." Rachel volunteered immediately when she heard about the plan. After everything she'd been through, she wanted to see this mission through to the end. Joining her was Alex Rivera, a covert operative known for his stealth and resourcefulness. Together, they formed the core of a small strike team tasked with infiltrating the Krylos system and sabotaging their infrastructure. Using captured Krylos technology, engineers disguised their ship to look like one of the aliens' own vessels. The plan was to slip past enemy patrols undetected and plant explosives at key locations. It was a suicide mission, but no one hesitated. They all knew what was at stake. As the team prepared to leave, Laura worked around the clock to decode more of the Krylos language. She hoped to find clues that might help them navigate the alien system or anticipate traps. Late one night, she stumbled upon something disturbing. Fragments of text hinted at the Krylos' true nature. They weren't conquerors but scavengers, programmed by biology to consume dying worlds. Their cycle wasn't malice, it was survival. The revelation shook Laura to her core. Were they really any different from the Krylos? Both species fought to protect their homes, even if it meant destroying others. Could there have been another way? A chance for coexistence? But there was no time to dwell on those questions. The team launched their mission, heading deep into enemy territory. As they approached the Krylos homeworld, they'd marveled at its strange beauty. Towering structures floated above a barren landscape, glowing faintly in the dim light of a distant star. It was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. They planted explosives at critical sites, avoiding detection until the very end. When the Krylos finally realized what was happening, Alex sacrificed himself to ensure the others escaped. His last act allowed Rachel and Laura to flee, their ship racing toward safety as explosions tore through the alien world behind them. As they limped back toward Earth, Rachel looked out the viewport at the stars. The war might be over, but the scars would remain for humanity, for the Krylos, and for everyone who had fought and died along the way. The strike team's mission to the Krylos homeworld changed everything. The destruction of their industrial core crippled the alien fleet, forcing the surviving ships to retreat permanently. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted as humanity declared victory. Streets filled with people waving flags, fireworks lit up the night sky, and news outlets broadcast images of smiling soldiers and scientists. For the first time in months, there was hope. But not everyone felt like celebrating. John Carter sat alone in his office, staring at a map of the solar system now marked with scars from the war. He thought about all the lives lost, the pilots who never returned, the civilians caught in the crossfire, and even the enemy, whose motives were far more complex than anyone had realized. Was this really a victory, or just another cycle of violence? Laura Bennett shared his unease. She spent her days studying what remained of the Krylos technology, piecing together fragments of their culture. Her research revealed a chilling truth. The Krylos weren't conquerors but scavengers, driven by instincts beyond their control. They saw dying worlds as resources to harvest before moving on, believing it was their purpose in the universe. Laura couldn't help but wonder, had humanity done the same thing? By destroying the Krylos, had they simply become another link in that endless chain of destruction? Rachel Monroe struggled with her own emotions. After returning from the mission, she was hailed as a hero, promoted to squadron leader, and given a medal for bravery. But none of it felt real. Every time she looked at the stars, she remembered Daniel's sacrifice and Alex's final moments. Their faces haunted her dreams, reminding her of the cost of survival. She tried to focus on training new recruits, teaching them the skills they'd need to protect Earth, but part of her wondered if fighting was the only answer. One evening, Rachel visited John at headquarters. They stood together on the rooftop, watching the city glow below. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked quietly. John sighed, leaning against the railing. "Reeg, son, months passed since the Krylos retreated, and life on Earth began to return to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such a war. The scars of battle remained etched in the minds of those who had fought, but humanity carried on. Cities rebuilt themselves, families reunited, and children played under skies that once again felt safe. Yet for some, the weight of what had happened lingered like a shadow. John Carter spent his days reflecting on the choices he'd made. He had always believed in doing whatever it took to protect humanity, but now he questioned whether survival was worth the price they paid. In quiet moments, he thought about the Krylos, not as monsters, but as beings caught in their own cycle of instinct and necessity. They hadn't asked for war any more than humans had. Still, someone had to make the hard decisions, and John knew he couldn't change the past. All he could do was prepare for the future. Laura Bennett dedicated herself to studying the remnants of Krylos technology. Her lab became a sanctuary where she worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of their language and culture. She hoped to learn from them, not just to understand how they fought, but why. Late at night, when the world was silent, she stared at the glowing symbols on her screen, wondering if there might have been another way, a chance to coexist instead of destroy. But deep down, she knew the truth. Sometimes survival meant sacrifice. Rachel Monroe stood in front of a group of cadets at the United Nations Space Command Academy. As a squadron leader, she was tasked with training the next generation of pilots. Today, however, she wasn't teaching combat maneuvers or tactical strategies. Instead, she spoke about something far more important. "When I first joined this fight," Rachel began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "I thought strength came from weapons and victories. I thought winning meant proving we were better than our enemies." She paused, looking out at the young faces before her. "But I was wrong. True strength isn't about destroying others. It's about protecting what matters most. It's about unity, compassion, and finding ways to live without repeating the mistakes of the past. The cadets listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration. For many of them, Rachel was a symbol of resilience, proof that even in the darkest times, humanity could endure. But she didn't want them to see her as invincible. She wanted them to remember the sacrifices made, the lives lost, and carry that memory forward. As the sun set outside the academy windows, Rachel dismissed the class and walked alone to the observation deck. There, she gazed up at the stars, thinking about Daniel and Alex. Their names would never be forgotten, carved into history alongside countless others who gave everything for Earth. She whispered a silent thank you, then turned away, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the years that followed, humanity rebuilt its Armada, not as a weapon of conquest, but as a shield against uncertainty. Ships patrolled the edges of the solar system, standing guard over a planet determined to survive. Earth had faced extinction and emerged stronger, though not unscarred. The lessons learned from the Krylos War shaped a new era, one defined by caution, curiosity, and hope. Far beyond the stars, the remnants of the Krylos drifted silently through space, their purpose extinguished but their legacy enduring. Humanity chose to remember them not as enemies, but as a reminder of how fragile life truly was, and how precious. As Rachel stepped outside that evening, the cool breeze brushing her face, she looked up at the endless expanse above. Somewhere out there, among the billions of stars, answers waited to be found. And maybe, just maybe, humanity would find a way to ensure that no one else would ever have to fight a war like this again.